Welcome to Ecclesia Principles, a biblical strategy for believers to engage in God's design for government with Ray Eppard.
Hello, glad you could join us again today. We're continuing to talk about building a bridge of trust. That's our Ecclesia principle. Now, with this, we said the bridge of trust, what we're focusing on this week are the real life problems that come from a bridge of trust that is broken, and especially on a societal scale. We really haven't so far used too many illustrations of an individual, though today we will get into seeing how societal issues affect individual relationships when that bridge of trust is broken on a societal level. Now, with this, our two passages that we've used, Proverbs 18:19, a brother offended is harder to be won than a strong city. Also, Matthew 24:12, and because lawlessness will abound, the love of many will grow cold. What we're seeing in our nation right now is the love of many growing cold. And it's because of lawlessness. And lawlessness, don't think of it in terms of just the legalities of the law. If you would, I've been quoting Stephen Covey, who wrote 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. In his book, he made the statement that the laws of human interaction are as fixed as the laws of nature. And if you would, the lawlessness that we are currently having is really, there are laws literally being broken. But what's even worse is the laws of human interaction are being violated. And a lot of them are being violated in the names of everyone having their own truth. That creates a problem, because at that point, there is no law. There is no fixed action of human interaction. Everybody just have it however you want, And so at this juncture, talking about what happens when a bridge of trust is broken, we've said that agreements are modified or eliminated. We said redress is sought very carefully, but sometimes forcefully. In other words, when these things happen, you'll usually end up seeing more violence take place. That's a sign that a bridge of trust has been broken. And we added to that at the end of yesterday that enemies can be formed. And right now we're at a stage where a lot of enemies are being identified. And that's a bad sign for our bridge of trust. It's a bad sign for our society. If we want to fix things, then we've got to get this bridge of trust restored. It's not, the bridge of trust is not let's all gather together and sing Kumbaya and everything will be all right. And I'll be honest with you, I'll throw something else out here, and there will be people I'm sure will not agree with me, but that's fine. It doesn't mean I'm wrong. But a lot of times, especially in what goes for racial unity. Number one, I believe there's only one race. We all came from Adam and Eve. Acts 17:26, God said that he made from one blood all nations. We're all related. There are not multiple races. And I could go down that path. If there are multiple races, if evolution is true, then humans are not equal. That would be contrary to the theory of evolution. And in all honesty, if you research it, Darwinism was used to promote slavery. Why? The premise that one was more advanced than the other. There's very little good that comes from the theory of evolution. And it's really at the root of many of our problems. Not understanding that we are created equal, but thinking that we all evolved and multiple races evolved. Then those multiple races are not equal. They can't be. under that scenario of the theory of evolution. No, we are created equal. That's the truth. But in this, again, going back to this, enemies get formed. That whatever group it is, then we begin to have certain enemies that are destroying. It creates separation among groups. And with that, another issue is, and this comes down to the more individual level, relational bridges are weakened or severed. Relational bridges are weakened or severed. You see, at that point, when the bridge of trust begins to be destroyed on a national scale, on a societal scale, then it affects how people interact at work. It affects how people interact on the job. Well, you know, they're from that group. You know, they're white, they're black, they're a Republican, they're a Democrat. It begins to strain the relational bridges. When that bridge of trust on a national scale is being whittled away at, it's being weakened, it's being destroyed, then individual interactions, because that person there, they're a part of that group that's the enemy. Enemies are formed. Ooh, I got to keep an eye on them. Yeah, I can't trust them. They're in that group. Oh, they agree with this ideology. Oh, they're bad. They're evil. Enemies are formed, and it begins to affect the relational bridges, even down on the individual level. It works its way down from that standpoint. Again, we have to understand justice and equality on a societal level. In other words, we have to see the big picture. It's easier to understand on an individual level, but there are things nationally, there are things culturally that it comes down, it filters all the way down to the individual level, and it affects, you know, before you could interact with that person. It was nice, but now there's a little bit of distrust both ways. Wonder how they feel about that. Wonder how they think about it. Wonder if they see it the way I do. Oh, I don't want to bring that up. I don't want to talk about it because what if they're on the other side? What if they don't agree with this? And you see, the information, unfortunately, news is no longer news. News is an opinion show now. It would be best if they said, and now the evening opinion. That would be better than saying the evening news, because most all it is here's an event, here's our opinion, this is the way we think you should think about it. You see, life used to be a little simpler. Think back, you know, I'm not going to tell my age, but when I was a kid, which we lived out in the country, I'll tell on myself a little bit. I actually remember when we put a bathroom in the house. I grew up having to go to the outhouse. And so I remember that. I was happy for that. Now, you see, here's the thing, that we had one channel that we could get good. There was a second channel, we could get all right. There was a third channel, you really had to want to watch the show to fool with it. And so that was our three channels that we had. But here's the thing, our neighbor had the same three. The ones across town on the other side of town had the same three. It didn't matter which ethnic group you were with. It didn't matter which party you were connected to, which one you agreed with. It did not matter. Everyone had basically the same information. And because of that, back in that time, Democrats and Republicans, wasn't a lot of difference between them. It just wasn't. I mean, you look back, John F. Kennedy, who was considered a liberal for his day, he would be a conservative Republican today. He would be a conservative Republican today. John F. Kennedy would. You know, Hubert H. Humphrey, I remember reading a speech that he gave at the 1964 Democratic Convention on the coming crisis. And he said there's a crisis coming that very few people are recognizing. But if we act now, we can fix it. He said in a few decades, health care is going to be a crisis. Said it in 64. He said there's 3 things we can do to fix it. And, you know, he said that at the very beginning part, and I thought, well, that intrigued me because I found it during the Affordable Care Act discussion, which has turned out to be very little care and definitely not very affordable for most people. And with this, I was thinking, what did he suggest? I read it and I went, it would be great if we did this now. If we incorporate, and it's still not been incorporated, I would be in favor of what he was talking about back in 1964 if we put it into play right now. It's not my topic, so I'm not going to go into too much of it, but all of it was common sense approaches and would have helped. Would to God that we would have done what he said. Now, again, here's the thing, that through all of this, through enemies being created, those relational bridges are weakened. And part of the issue now, again, rather than having news, I can still remember the first time that I watched the news and they announced at the very end of the news broadcast, we have decided to give an opinion on the news. And if people like this, we will continue to do this. Well, evidently people liked it because now there is no news, there's really just opinion with a few facts. So it really took hold very well. But with that, now what we have is the facts with, here's what I think about it. And we have thousands instead of 3. We have thousands of different opinions that we can get. So I don't know which one they're listening to. I don't know which one they're listening to. They might not be listening to the one that I'm listening to. So when something happens on a national scale, wonder who they're listening to. And I'm not saying that we shouldn't have opinions. I'm fine with that. But it would be great if news was news and the opinion shows were opinion shows. That's all I would really be asking for. Just give the news without the opinions. Just, like Joe Friday from Dragnet. Just the facts, ma'am. Yeah, would to God that that's what we had, just the facts. But you see, because of all of these circumstances and the national crisis regarding our bridge of trust, enemies are formed and relational bridges are weakened or severed. And with this, kind of as we talked about yesterday as well, those 3 groups of people, opportunists often rush in to gain advantages. Opportunists often rush in to gain advantages. And you and I both know that happens in a whole lot of the situations that we're seeing today. Our bridge of trust is being harmed, and opportunists are coming in to take advantage. Join us again tomorrow.